I have a long history with Sweetland. Before I ever met Christian Sparks, had read the book 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
Um, and I can earnestly and wholeheartedly say this has been the most serendipitous, magical thing to happen in my working life because Sweetland was my favorite novel. And I had even looked into, like, oh, are the rights available? And, things like that.
Yeah, it's a joy to speak with you about Sweetland. And actually, I just saw the burning season last week and loved that too. So
Oh, I'm so
uh,
glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, I saw actually that you had written something on the Burning season too, so that's really exciting.
yeah, I got to speak with Jonas. I'm just in the process of getting that live, and we had a great
Great.
conversation. But I really thought the two of you were wonderful in the film. So
Thank you. That's so kind. Thanks. Yeah, I was just saying, I think this is the first time this has ever happened to me to have two Canadian films being released in theaters basically at the same time. It's like very jazzy.
it's it's wild. I mean, the films are so entirely different. Like they're just
Mhm.
opposite ends. So, and of course, Sweetland is just it's just a beautiful, compelling piece. What attracted you to the role?
Well, I have a long history with Sweetland. I before I ever met Christian Sparks had read the book 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
Um, and I can earnestly and wholeheartedly say this has been the most serendipitous, magical thing to happen in my working life because Sweetland was my favorite novel. And I had even looked into, like, oh, are the rights available? And, things like that. So I grew up in Newfoundland and I've read everything Michael Crummey has ever written. He's my favorite author. So when I met Christian Sparks at the Whistler Film Festival and then was the one audience member gasping in the Q&A of his other film Hammer when I found out they had the rights to Sweetland. It's all just been an amazing kind of domino effect from there. I joked to him, I think, like, will you let me come to set? Like, I'll bring some muffins or something. Like, I just love this story so much. I'm so invested in this becoming, a visual adaptation of this story that, yeah. So it's just been, it's a story that's been really alive in me for nearly a decade. So getting
Wow.
to be part of the film is like crazy, the best.
So what is it that you connect with so deeply on it? I mean, having read the book and wanting to help bring that story to life, what is it that matters so much about the story to you?
I grew up in a very small community in
Mm,
Newfoundland. And, although there was no resettlement around the community that I grew up in, I certainly had heard a lot about that growing up and, great aunts and uncles. And, like I was near the exploits area of Newfoundland. And, I just kind of, even without having to leave my home because of the government cutting off electricity. We moved when I was 11 or 12 because my dad found greater financial opportunity at the time in Alberta. And I really identify with what I think is almost a universal feeling amongst Newfoundlanders of like such a strong tie to that place. And I grew up doing a lot of the things that you see in Sweetland. I have family members who are very similar to a lot of the characters in the story. And I just really identify with, even though I don't live in Newfoundland right now, I never rule it out because I would love to be able to return and spend more time there. I go home every year, but I really I really identify with the pull because I've had such opportunity in other cities and even in other countries, and but Newfoundland is home, like, through and through. And so I just really, I understand, especially for a character like Moses Sweetland who's spent his life, so entrenched in that place. I just really get the pain and the kind of not just confusion, but like the utter no of it, of just like,
mm.
no, I'm not leaving. I've seen that. I've seen it personally. So yeah.
And it's amazing to watch Moses through this film because I mean, this film is it's stunning visually,
Mhm.
and there's a spiritual reverence for Newfoundland and certainly this natural world.
Mm.
Um, and I was wondering if you could maybe you can talk a little bit about that because, like you said, that it's always home, but this is a space that's caught in this pull between you know modernization and celebrating and keeping its rich culture.
Yes. Yeah, I love that you use that phrase, like a spiritual reverence, because I do see that in Christian as a filmmaker. And even though The King Tide, I'm not sure if you've seen that film, but that
Love
film's
it.
had yeah, and it's had
Yeah.
so much, it's had a great reception, which is really exciting too. It's been like quite a year for him as well. Like you can really, even though that film is less about Newfoundland, and I think Sweetland is very much about Newfoundland and what it means to live there, you can really sense his, like you say, like a reverence for people who are kind of really willfully have really willfully dug in, I think, to a way of life.
Mm,
And I think that that's becoming actually, in some senses, more important to me than ever, just in terms of how fast our world is changing. And I mean, I can't even wrap my head around what people are saying with AI sometimes and technology. And I know there are positive uses, but
mm,
I mean, I am a very I kind of like to lie on the grass myself a lot. Like I need to be in the woods a lot. Like I need that grounding, and I'm noticing that more than ever. And just I would say even just like a preservation of like the fact that my ancestors all we ate what we fished and what we hunted, and the berries that we picked, and everybody kind of built their own houses. And I think that's, I think there is worth in preserving like meaning around that. And that I think the world has become so easy, very difficult in some senses. And I think we're all a little shocked at the state of affairs on the planet
mm.
right now. But I think, especially in urban, in urban lifestyles, like we can go days without really even connecting with a person or with the food that we're eating or where things are coming from. And I think that we'd be sort of better off if there was a more symbiotic relationship with our environment. And I think that's still very present in much of Newfoundland. And I really appreciate that.
Well, and
Yeah.
he says on more than one occasion, who's got it better than this? And he's just, in his boat or lying on the grass. And,
Hmm.
it's interesting because we talk about connection, and I hadn't used that word when I was thinking about this film, but it's certainly there. And even coming out of, I mean, it feels like everything is some sort of conversation about the pandemic. I don't feel like this is a conversation about the pandemic, but this idea of connecting as
Hmm.
opposed to just, it's not about me, it's about something bigger.
Yeah,
And I see that here.
I agree. And I think it's woven into the film for
Mm,
sure. And it's definitely present in the novel. Um, I think, I don't think it's really in the trailer, but there's definitely a sense, that some characters kind of say to him, like, you're up there cleaning up the cemetery all the
mm,
time, but like these people are dead. But I think
mm,
there's like even that sort of spiritual connection of, but does it matter that they're dead? They were here before we were here. And to just walk away from that and to kind of just go, well, that's all in the past, I think is really difficult for someone like Moses. And um, I think even though, obviously, without being too spoilery about the film, we see what happens to him when he's left to his own devices, so to speak. And we need connection, despite him sort of, I think, supplementing with his connection with the land and with his lifestyle, but without these people that he's known his entire life, it's a different situation altogether. And I think it does beg that question of like, what are we actually capable in our own
Mm.
in our own agency, in our own bubbles that we create, and our own sort of like agendas and missions, and like we are so affected by the tides of others.
Well, and this is a ghost story. In
Hmm.
so many ways, this is a ghost story. It is haunting in a number of
Yeah.
ways. And actually, it's funny. As I was watching, I'm like, I know Christian did both films, but it feels like a very natural companion to the King Tide, even though they're entirely different. Uh,
Hmm.
but so I gotta ask, like, because I love what you're saying. I'm intrigued by it, and yet we have a character like Moses who's being told to let go,
Hmm.
and we live in a world where we have to move to the next shiny thing.
Right.
Uh, and I'm wondering what do you think, or do you think we lose anything when we let go of those ghosts entirely, or we let go of that history and that story?
Oh, yeah. I could write you a thesis. I would spend a year writing you a thesis on that, because I don't even know if I'm clear on for myself on what all of the repercussions of that would be.
Mm.
Um, I know for me it matters a lot. I mean, just in terms of like my parents are visiting me right now. I'm working in Winnipeg, and they're hiding away in the basement right now. But I love getting to spend time with my family, and sometimes we'll just like, even yesterday we ended up talking about these two brothers who drowned when I was very young, in my hometown. And it was just sort of in the way that we were talking about them. I'm writing a script right now that's set in Newfoundland as well. And there was just sort of a quality in the way that we were talking about them and what can never be solved because one of them was never found. And sometimes I relate things like that to, I don't believe that we should live in the past,
Mm.
because I think, we have to evolve. We have to evolve in order to, um, even make the world, a more, just as a safer place for everyone. We need to evolve,
Mm.
but I wish that we could find a way to evolve that still is considerate of things that have happened that have shaped people in the ways that they have. Because we were sort of talking about what that even did to the community. And I think that that's very present in Sweetland as a film. And I think that sort of needs to be part of the conversation a little more in terms of like what repercussions are. And without getting into the specifics of we're dealing with some pretty dark, like worldwide we're dealing with some pretty dark histories, and
Mm.
some that have really harmed people. But I think just in terms of like looking at what our ancestors did and the people who came before us, you know I think it's a little too short-sighted to think, yeah, but we've got the answers now, because I'm not sure that's true.
And in 20 years, the next generation will be saying, "How did you miss it then?"
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it's Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny in this film, moving on isn't the devil. It's not the demon.
Right.
It's not like they're doing some terrible thing. We
No.
see it is a step into progress. Your character, Jesse is
Yes.
the young man, right? And
Yes.
so moving forward is like this can be positive. This can be
Totally.
positive. But
There's
but
opportunity out there for him. Yeah.
yeah. but you don't want to lose that at the same time. It's such a delicate balance.
A very delicate balance. And that's what I love, films that challenge me in that way. When I feel conflicted actually about, about what to even think at the end of the film, uh, that excites me. So it's
Yeah,
exciting to be in a film that, like you say, there isn't an easy answer.
yeah,
And you go, oh, well, again, I don't want to spoil the film, but you go, oh, if he had just done this, there could have been an entire, like a new landscape of whatever. But you just go, but that's not the truth for him. So I love that that you say delicate balance, because I think this film is certainly that, and I think that's true of life in Newfoundland. You know, I think
mm,
it's an island like that has been, you know, people are have lived sort of despite the elements there for a long time, and there's such beauty, and then there's a lot of things that are like, ooh, okay guys, let's like let's move along here. But you're right, that's life. And but I think the most important thing, speaking on like more universal terms, is that we not just push things into like, well, it's this way or the other way. That's not true. I really don't believe that. I think we need to have greater bandwidth for more ways of living, and to make room for more ways of living.
absolutely, absolutely. In some ways, we're all in rowboats in the fog.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, which is
Caught
very
in
apt.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, Sarah, it is such a joy to speak with you. I really appreciate your time. And the
Thank
film
you.
was wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, it's lovely to talk with you too. I appreciate the attention you're giving both films. That's really kind. Thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot. I appreciate it and I wish you the best. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.